Is that rocking? 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 Is that rocking?
This is Adama Grace, and I am a initiated priestess in the Orisha worship. I'm a priestess of Olokun. I live here in Baltimore, Maryland. I also am a farmer. And when I say farmer, I'm trained in farming. I've worked on urban farms. I've worked on rural farms. I've run a farmer's market. So I've done many things with agriculture, yet I am dispossessed of land. It is my goal one day to own some land and grow my own food. And my mentor, Eugene Alala, down in Atlanta, has told us, grow where you are. So I do have a rooftop garden. Meanwhile, we're gonna give honor to the ancestors. We're gonna pour libation, and we're here on these beautiful grounds. And there is in front of me an herb garden where I'm going to offer libation to the ancestors. So this is kind of a two-part thing. What I'm gonna need is if somebody can call out the names of the ancestors. So I'm gonna salute mine first, and then I'm gonna open it to everyone's ancestors. We're gonna call out those names as well. So, Omi Tutu, Ono Tutu, Tutu Ile, Tutu Ashu, Majuba Olodumare, Majuba Olorum, Ibaye Baye, Egungun, Majuba, Majuba Olodurum, Majuba, Majuba, Majuba. We thank you, we praise you for having us here today. Ibaye Baye Torum. Ibaye, Reverend Henry Hall, Ibaye, Mabel Hall, Ibaye, Mary Wallace Cunningham, Ibaye, Pearl Hall, Ibaye, John Hall, Ibaye, Byron Craig, Ibaye, Ricardo Craig, Ibaye, Mary Wallace Cunningham, Ibaye, Asbury Cunningham, Ibaye. Now I would ask, and who can we hear? All right, and so now I'm going to the chat and I'm reading the chat. And so I'm asking if you would please put in names of your ancestors, both your family ancestors and then communal ancestors, so that we may honor them as well. Ibaye, Carrie Weems, Ibaye, Bob Terrell, Ibaye, Dr. Fleming, Senior, Ibaye, Hazel Brown Fleming, Ibaye, Jimmy West, Ibaye, Sean Greenwood, Ibaye, George Washington Carver, Ibaye, Jeannie Bowie, Ibaye, Gwendolyn Harrington, Ibaye, Edith Briscoe, Ibaye, Ida B. Wells, Ibaye, Sadie Roberts Joseph, Ibaye, Lisa Bowie Moon, Ibaye, Ola May Terrell, Ibaye, Calvin Pierce, Ibaye, Booker T. Watley, Ibaye, W.E.B. Du Bois, Ibaye, Oscar Hargest and Herman Hargest, Ibaye, Juanita Brown Hamill, Ibaye, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ibaye, Oscar Grant, Ibaye, Nan, Ibaye, Holy Rock, Ibaye, Clotel Harris, Ibaye, Freddie Gray, Ibaye, Vernon Johns, Ibaye, Corin Gaines, Ibaye, Audrey Lord, Odell Weems, Sojourner Truth, Ibaye, Dana, Jacqueline, Jean Claude, Grandma Florence, Florence siblings, Belebe siblings.
Mama May.
Ibae Mama May, Ibae Corrine Bowie, Ibae Marcus Garvey, Ibae Huey P. Newton, Ibae Frederick Douglass, Ibae Malcolm X, Ibae Marcus Garvey, Ibae Iris Johnson,
Charity Hicks.
Ibae Charity Hicks. All right, I'm gonna close it there. Ibae Bae Torun, Ariku, Iyawa Iriku, Babawa Tobayale, Eshu.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Donna. Thank you. I again want to just really say how honored I am to be here and moderating and involved in this. And I have some special thanks I want to just acknowledge is Zachary, who actually cleverly looped me into it. And we go back to about 2012 or so when I met him at Cornell. I have to say that I am deeply appreciative for the help, assistance, encouragement, love, energy that Dr. Gail Myers shared in putting this together. She's responsible for curating some of the most wonderful folks here that I just got to meet. Dr. Owusu Bandeli and Ms. Wanda Blake. And I don't see him here, but I know you have him by phone, Mr. Scott. I want to start by using the libation ceremony to bring us into this session, and really what was on my heart in setting this up is that we would share our narratives of the work of the ancestors. Those narratives that include our own personal journey. How do we get with a, tractor in our backyard? And I just wanted to start that. It seems most appropriate to begin with Mr. Will Scott. I thought I would just start off by letting you know that, and everyone on this session, that you grew up on a farm and that your family have deep roots to the land. And I am curious if you would take some time to share a little bit about how you became interested in farming, and also what influenced you along your journey to found the African Americans Farmers Association of California. I am very moved by all the efforts, and I know we'll hear about some significant ones later, that help our Black farmers and have helped our Black farmers to set forth on their use of the land. So if you could just give me a little background, share with us about your family upbringing and what led you to organize this particular group for Black farmers.
Okay, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here and to talk with everyone. I guess to give you a little bit of my history is that my grandfather was a sharecropper, and my father, he sharecropped with him, so therefore I got in on the tail end of it. But in 1952, the family began to migrate towards California. My father left first, and then he sent for us. We arrived in California, and naturally it was in, I guess, August of 1952. And I was surprised, too, is that I looked out the train window and cotton had beat me to California. So I didn't get away from cotton, but grapes, we cut a lot of grapes, we got here to survive. But initially, my parents was pro-education, get an education and get away from farming, because, our legacy is that farming didn't pay us any money. We worked for free, and didn't get paid. So I did what, I was being an obedient son. I got my education, but like I said, I think we find that in life is that we are here for a reason. There's a mission for us, and we have a calling. And I bought 5 acres, and I started to grow some food for myself, and then the community got involved. You know, they wanted it, so I started growing it for them. So that's how I initially got into farming. You know, I really didn't get away from it, but I also went on to, you know, to get an education, and I was hired by the telephone company as an outside plant design engineer. So I retired from there, but like I said, there's something that's waiting for you. So I got back into farming. I started farming, you know, mostly growing stuff for the community and for my family. But also, too, is that 1994, when the black farmers filed that suit against the USDA, that suit made it privy to us farmers in California. And I might add, too, is that there's almost 100,000 farmers in California. Of that number, we make probably a little bit over, I guess we comprise a little bit over 500. So you're talking about less than 0.5% of the farmers in California are African Americans. So, but getting back to the lawsuit, we started meeting to see how we could play, you know, get a part of the settlement on that. So that's when we became organized. This is in 1997. 1998, we became a 501(c), which was a nonprofit organization. And then we started really getting into farming. And it's been exhilarating to me because, like I said, having been raised on a farm, you know, there was something spiritual about it to me, is that you take something that's dead and you plant it and it comes alive, you know, and then from what your efforts, some people enjoy partaking of what you grow, you know, you're doing a service to your fellow man. So we grew from that, you know, and we started organizing. And then during that year we was formed, the word got out that there was a African-American farmers group, you know, so I started getting information from Northern California up in the Oakland area, San Francisco, and also I got some interception from down in Los Angeles, California. So those areas kind of brought me into it, is that actually there was a need for us to be able to provide food for those people who are in the inner city, you know, who was inundated with asphalt and concrete. So, you know, me living in Fresno, which is actually the center of agriculture, you know, and from this area, you know, we almost feed the whole world, you know, the whole nation anyway. So that's when we formed the African-American Farmers of California. And we said the African-American Farmers of California because we wanted to include all those farmers who existed in California to come together as a group so that we can kind of facilitate things and try to help each other out to get into it, because we as people of African-American descent, you know, this country was started by the labor that we provided for them. I read a deal saying that if there was no slave, there would be no slavery. Without slavery, there'd be no cotton. Without cotton, there would be no industrial revolution. And without industrial revolution, there would be, the United States would be just another third world colony, European colony. So we played a tremendous part of it. And we still, today, we have to play a part, because food is going to be probably, in my opinion, going to be the next crisis that we're going to have to endure. Now, we're going through a virus pandemic now, but if you can imagine if this put us through what we're going through now, what would food, a shortage of food or quality of food, to put us through next time? So I think we as people of color, especially African American, we have a part to play in it, and we need to get about our business. I've been fortunate that being the president of the African American Farmers, I've met some great people. Gail is one of them. Professor Roach out of Oakland, he's one of them. Jabari out of LA. People who was already doing something, you know, in the city, making people aware of the need of supporting the remaining farmers we had. So there's something in the midst. We were working on it, you know, and it takes people to do it. But as far as me, is that when I retired from the telephone company, people said I jumped out of the skillet into the fire, you know, when I got into farming, because I went back to something that we was told to get away from. But I think that we need to be able to provide a means for our own food. To me, there's two things about food, you know, the security, you know, the quality of food we have, and also the security that food is going to be available. We have to have producers who are going to grow the food for us. And that's the part that I'm playing in it. And Dr. Gale is one that's playing the other part. Dr. David Roach is another part, and other people, and some of the people that I'm talking on this panel too are providing a very important part of this cycle that we have to be involved in. And but as far as me, is that I find pure pleasure out of getting back into farming because as it is, I had a birthday last month, so I've been around a little while, 8 decades, if you might say. So I've seen some things and I'm experiencing some things, and I'm really optimistic, by talking to you and being able to talk with each and every one of you, the role that you're playing in this thing. We have to come together as a people in order to do what we have to do. But not to go any further, but Jemila, if you have any other questions, I can dwell on that also.
Well, I think thank you so much for that, and happy belated birthday as well. I know that we start talking about foods in particular because food's very central to our Black experience. And as a farmer, I know that in our conversation, we touched on the importance of retaining some of our some of the vegetables and legumes that are part of our tradition. And you talked about that, and I really am curious as a farmer to hear your thoughts on the connection between farmers and our community with regards to food. That could speak to your efforts to help farmers to get food. The accessibility is clearly an issue, not a desert and really apartheid. Could you speak a little bit about that? I love black eyed peas. It just reminds me of my mom, and I know Wanda has something to say about black eyed peas later on. So I just really, if you could just speak about the culture and food from a farmer's perspective. And the last thing, because of the limited amount of time, is that I really would like farmers who are out on this call listening in, Black farmers, whether they're thinking about farming or doing it now, if you could just share some nuggets of wisdom, some encouragement, some inspiration, because throughout this, I see the theme of our resilience, the spirit of Black people to persevere. And we could definitely take in some of that on our plate right now.
Okay, thank you. But I think, too, is that getting back to food, that saying is that you are what you eat. Basically, when I was growing up, is that our people, our forefathers, they knew what to eat in order to sustain themselves, to keep them healthy. Now, when I was in Oklahoma, we had no doctors, The only thing that we had close to a doctor was a herbinist. This guy dealt with herbs, he would disappear off into the woods, and he would come out with a sack full of things, and he would go through, a boil or whatever he had to do, and then he would give it, and it would cure you whatever it was ailing you, And then the food that we ate, it was all healthy for us. You talk about your collard greens, you talk about your cabbage. We know that collard greens, it lowers your cholesterol. Cabbage, they kind of cleanse you out, and then some of the other stuff that provide us with the protection we need to build up our immune system. I'm kind of pro black eyed peas because, first of all, that in California, when I first got to California, you couldn't find them. They wasn't being grown. So that was one of the reasons why I went into farming, because you talk about collard greens, you talk about black eyed peas, you talk about okra. Those things are indigenous to us. Those are our food. As a matter of fact, most of those foods come out of Africa anyway. That's where they started. So we are the one that brought those to this country, and we had to eat them, and it sufficed us because it had to make us strong in order to do what we was required to do, doing that fruit-free labor. So that was one of the things that I went back into it too, is that so that we can provide our people with the food that we was raised upon, that we knew was healthy for us. And all we had to do is that eat it in moderation and try to not put all those additives to it in order to more or less make it taste good, But my mother, I had to give her credit too, is that either one thing, she was the best cook in the world, or at that time I was half hungry or whatever it is, but she could take any food, and make a meal out of it. For instance, there was a time when, I'm from a big family, there was 15 of us. And I would come home sometime, and I look in the kitchen, there was nothing there. But when 5 o'clock or 5:30 come around, my mother would call us to the table to eat. And when I went through the kitchen, all I saw was a sack of flour, and then I saw 3 onions on the table. But when she got down to feed us, we had biscuits and gravy. And I want to tell you something, it really fortified us. It really set us up. But I think that we have to get back to eat healthier food, because we are people of African descent. We are plant eaters. We have to kind of, I like meat. I tell you the truth, I like meat. I eat meat. But we have to do it in moderation, and we have to eat those things that we know that are good for our system. And I can tell you this, is that getting into farming, right now it's really difficult too, because first of all is that when they emancipated us, they were supposed to give us 40 acres and a mule. Well, someone was given 40 acres too, but the carpetbaggers and the Southerners, they took it from us, so we end up really not having that much land in the first place. Even in California, believe it or not, had more Jim Crow laws on the books than Mississippi, so things have been really tough in California as far as being able to acquire money, and then having access to capital is a problem too. But I think that there are some things in place too, is that we can slowly bring some people into this farming too, is that, like the organization I belong to, is that we have a 16-acre demonstration site, is that we take people in the community, and teach them about farming, so that they can take whatever they learn there back to their own visual homes or to their own visual farms, and become good, because in acquiring capital, it's very strict. They ask you, first of all, what are your experience as a farmer? Well, you go on and say that you want to be a farmer is not good enough. So you're going to have some kind of experience. So with the demonstration site, we can give people like an incubator system where they can go in and get to a program, and they can come out where they have been exposed to farming. They've worked in the process of being a farmer. So they have something to as far as being able to be a farmer, that they can put on their resume. But I think that also too is that as people of color, when you talk about farming, you have that legacy that's associated with slavery. So they try to run as far away from farming as they can. So what we use now is that we have to be update and get in tune with the new technology, is that we don't say farming, we say agriculture. Because agriculture covers a whole multitude of things too. As a person can be in agriculture and not do what I do, get out there and with the shovel and and irrigate and stuff like that. There's other parts of agriculture that our people can get involved in. Like me as a farmer, I need to be able to go to someone and says, I need to have you to come out with your drone planes, fly over my property, tell me where I need amendments at, tell me where I have an infestation of insects, so that I can maybe spot check that, or I can treat that without going through a really expensive doing the whole area. So there's a lot of opportunity for young people to get into farming. But also too is about this land too, and that's why I think that we as a people have to come together. Is that churches have money. It's enough to save someone's soul, but that the churches need to do something else too. They need to try to take care of people while they exist on this earth physically. And that with the money they have, they need to acquire land. And from the land that they can find people who can farm it, and produce food for us. I think it's a way of making us more or less independent. Now, in California, like I said, that it's tough to get land here because land is going up. You're talking about if you have land, bare land just with a well on it, you're talking about $20,000 to $30,000 an acre. So that's quite a bit of money for a new person to try to get into it. But we're trying to work with the places like USDA, UC Extension, and also some of the college, as far as being able to come up with the capital in order to get young people involved in it. In our organization, we've been fortunate to have some young people who actually went to college and they majored in agriculture. So that's part of education, to get to have the credentials to really move into it. We just have to come together as a group and get people to come up with the money to acquire the land. Land is very important. Mm-hmm. And we know that God only made so much land, and it's a diminishing resource. Once it's all owned up, then that's it. And those who own the land have the right to be here. So what we are put in as a people, we have a right to be here. We'll earn a right to be here. And if we earn the right, then you need to exercise your right and get land and become a farmer. I'm optimistic too, as I meet young people too. It's like the efforts that are being made here now, that we get the word out, and I think we can come together as a people, because time is running out for us, to me, as a nation, that we have to come together and get this thing straight once and for all. Make America, I hear the word, is make America great again. In my opinion, America has never been great. It's been in the process of being great, and until you get all these people to working together, and us in particular, coming together and putting our effort into this thing, is that America would never be great. But anyway, that's my opinion too, and we're working hard to try to get some young people into it. And I met some young people that had some really, their heart is in it. And I think to be a farmer, spiritually, you got to love it, and then I begun to love it too, because like I said, as I stated before, is that to take something and put it in the ground and have it become alive, that's spiritual. Also, too, is that if you are a spiritual person, we came from the soil, according to the scripture. Okay. So there has to be a love, affection there. And I think that by coming together with the young people coming up with this new technology, they can put that other part to this thing, is that, in this country, we worship money, and skin color is a religion. But I think that we have to be able to say that money is a tool that has to be used in order to make life great for each and every one of us. Also, we have to get over this kick about this color thing too. Is that first of all that there's, to me, that no one is greater than me, and I'm no greater than anybody. I don't care what condition they're in. So we have to kind of get to that part too and solve that. But this food is very important too, because I think that that's the one thing that's a commonality between us as people, is that you notice that when we're sitting down to eat, you can sit and eat and be at peace with anybody, regardless of who they are. Indeed. So I think that this would be something that we can actually bring a lot of people together, and we as a people of color, is that we do what we do best. We like to serve one another. But Jemila, I hope I covered
you sure did. I think I could listen to you all evening over some collard greens and black eyed peas. But I know that you basically you set the stage for what Gail helped me to pull together, which is an intergenerational panel here. But before we move out of certain age brackets and such, I'd like to take this time to thank you for your wisdom, your experience, your commitment, and I'm blessed to know you. I really would like to say that I'm delighted to introduce and to welcome Dr. Bendelli to the panel. I just met him again, a new person in my life, but what's interesting about the conversation I had with him, and he brings so much to us as Black people, history, a perspective, and I think that I will let these following questions just set the format for him to share. Are you on, Dr. Bendelli?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you again. Now, rumor has it that you're not born up on the farmer boy, but you're actually from Baltimore. So that is kind of interesting to me, because coming from Baltimore, I can't see how that connection between you getting into farming. So if you could just open up by sharing a little bit about what drew you into this interest and involvement in food justice and sovereignty and agriculture. I think I'm going to put in a couple questions all in one, and then we'll come back because I have a few for you, and I'm going to admit I'm not good at this time management with people talking, so I'm asking people to self-regulate a little, not, you know, but I also wanted to know, I've always been curious. It's one of the things that I caught my attention in traveling to D-Town farms was the fact that culture is in the word agriculture. And I'm just curious about what those connections are between food and culture. And I'll come back at you with some more questions.
Well, thank you so much, Jemila. I'm really honored to be a part of this panel, and I'm particularly pleased that it's so intergenerational. You know, so I'm really, really, really happy about that. But before I start, you know, you might notice that I have my Juneteenth shirt on, and the reason why I have that shirt is because of Sadie Roberts Joseph. You may have heard of her because it made national news, her tragic death. But Sadie Roberts Joseph was the founder of the Odell S. Williams Now and Then African American Museum in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I attended, as I normally do, and Sadie is the person that drives Juneteenth in Baton Rouge. So I've always attended. And last year, when I attended, she kind of like, this shirt I had, she just casually walked by me and just kind of handed it to me and just kept going. And I asked her that I've been doing quiz bowls at Southern University for 25 years in the college level, but I've also do elementary, junior, senior high school. Wherever my grandbabies go, I do a quiz bowl. And ironically, I had asked her to be a judge in this year's quiz bowl. And unfortunately, what had happened, she was trying to help a troubled young man who was her tenant, and he was behind in his rent, and he killed her. So I did dedicate this year's event to the honor of Sadie Roberts Joseph. In fact, I invited her sister, and we gave her a plaque, and and we're gonna call that from now on. Now, as far as the culture is concerned, it's really all around us in terms of the importance of agriculture. Just for example, like a few very short poems allude to agriculture. Margaret Walker: our grandmothers were strong. They moved through fields sowing seed. They touched earth and grains grew. They were full of sturdiness and singing. And Haki Madhubuti, who was a publisher, author, activist in Chicago, he tells us, we are a forest people, land rooted, vegetable strong, feet fastened to soil with earth strengthened toes, determined fruit, anchored, where music soared, where dancers danced, where griots gave memory, where smiles were not bought. And then finally, Toni Morrison, Song of Solomon. Grab this land, take it, hold it, my brothers. Make it, my brothers, shake it, squeeze it, turn it, twist it, beat it, kick it, kiss it, whip it, stomp it, dig it, plow it, seed it, reap it, rent it, buy it, sell it, own it, build it, multiply it, and pass it on. Can you hear me? Pass it on. That's from Song of Solomon. So that's just a few indications of just how powerful agriculture is to our culture. Like, for example, the holiday of Kwanzaa, based on the first fruits of the harvest. A lot of songs that our singers sing. Nina Simone, Cotton Eye Joe, Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit. Oscar Brown, 40 Acres in the Mill. So it's all around us. You talk about proverbs. I got quite a few proverbs of African descent that I really love. Words are sweet, but they don't take the place of food. I also like the one in terms of, lost my train of thought. Treat a guest as a guest for 2 days. On the third day, give him a hoe. Now we talking about the agricultural tool now, let's be clear about that. So the culture is really, really all around us. And Gail and I co-authored a chapter of this land justice book entitled Roots. And it tells the story of, it's an African poem statement. All wakamu mona kambe, yalilule kambe, yalilule tambe. That was passed on to generations of folks from the Gambia, Senegal, Gambia area to the U.S. So there were people would, the elders would recite it. They forgot the meaning of it, and they finally, this was like the Moran family in South Sea Islands, and they actually went to Africa. They found someone who translated that, and it's translated, everyone comes together. Let us work hard. The grave is not yet finished. Let his heart be perfectly at peace. So even though they didn't know the meaning of that until that they visited, they kept that in the family for years. So the culture is really, really, really all around us. And then as you know, that crosses over in terms of the political arena, because a lot of the, I said it on the earlier land justice panel this morning. And of course, we were reminded again, Republic of New Africa, the Nation of Islam, Marcus Garvey, all were land-based. So the culture is really, really everywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would like you at this time to speak a little bit about what the role of Southern University and the 1890 Black Land Grant universities have accomplished in addressing land and food injustice.
Okay, but you also asked me about how I got interested in ag, so I'll do that real quick.
I sure
I was born and raised in Baltimore, Gilmore Projects, Baltimore Court. And the only connection that I really had with any plants or agriculture was the Clean Block campaign put on by the Afro-American newspaper. So folks in the neighborhood would take like tires, fill it with soil, and put ornamental plants and whatnot within the old tires. So that was my only experience until my wife and I and some other activists founded the Timbuktu Center in Baltimore in the early to late 70s. So it was like a freedom school. We had our preschool. We had African dance troops. We brought in speakers such as Haki Madhubuti, Dr. Bannis, and others. And in that atmosphere, it was always reinforced in terms of the importance of self-determination, the importance of land. So I went back to get a degree at the University of Maryland, which was really, College Park was really a waste of time, in all honesty. That was my second degree, so I didn't have to spend a lot of time. And so I was going to the Timbuktu Center at the same time, dealing with the Timbuktu Center at the same time. I co-hosted a radio show on Morgan's radio station called Voices and Choices in Ebony. And in 1978, we did my friend Charlie Duggar and I did a story on the cover of that magazine was Fred Bennett, a farmer from Alabama. And it also mentioned the Emergency Land Fund, which I didn't know anything about to that point. But ironically, I ended up working with the Emergency Land Fund. And the final connection was while we're at Timbuktu Center, an activist got access to a farm in a place called Man's Choice, Pennsylvania, all white. But we could use the farm, so we would take youth up during the summer and plant And I knew very little about ag at the time. That was before I even went back to school with it. And but I was planting organically. So I've always had that interest in organic production. Now, as far as when you mentioned Southern, the 1890s, I also include Tuskegee, because I studied under the Booker T. Watley, who was at first a professor at Southern. A lot of people don't know that he was a professor at Southern before he went to Tuskegee, where he set up his plan, the Tuskegee small farm plan. And what he was trying to do was encourage more of our farmers who had limited land to grow some of the same crops that Brother Scott mentioned, in terms of cowpeas, melons, collards, and other greens, and to sell locally. And he always said, like, use what you have. I remember in class one time, somebody said, one of the students said, Dr. Wiley, why don't some of these farmers, why don't they start selling it up in Chicago and New York? And he said, that reminds me of, it was a very romantic night on the lake, and the young man said to the young lady, if I had the arms of an octopus, I would embrace you with every one. And his response was, hell, you're not using the two that you got. And he said that was the same kind of wisdom that he shared. So he was born and raised on the farm, but he really, really did a lot in terms of small farmers all over to the South adopted some of his practices. Now, at Southern University, one thing that you have to keep in mind that the land grants are tremendously underfunded. But the Black land grants, when you compare that, like for example, in Louisiana, LSU is the 1860 land grant. Southern is the 1890. So each state is like that. It's Florida, Florida A&M, and University of Florida. But we're greatly underfunded, but it's a lot more service oriented to the underserved. So a lot of times, like what the folks at LSU would do, they would get like the most successful farm and then set up a demonstration. We would do the opposite. We would get a farmer who may be struggling and then help set up demonstrations for that farm that would allow us to use the resources to help the farmer set up his operation. And in addition to that, we always made access to training sessions, both training sessions that we at the university dealt with, or other regional training sessions that others. So we made it possible for farmers to attend those sessions.
Thank you very much. And I'm cognizant of the time, but I do want to ask you to share a little bit about Saffron, that you, the Southeastern African-American Farming Organic Network that you've co-founded. Just a little bit about that and some of the challenges that they might be facing and other Black farmers, and also to sort of acknowledge that these struggles are not just in our country, but they exist throughout the world, wherever Black people are. I would like to ask that in closing, you would reflect on, how the recent exposure of police brutality has faced African Americans with some enormous struggles, but that our experience has resonated with Africans throughout the world. And I want to just ask, do you think that some of the Africans, do you think that African farmers outside of the United States are facing similar challenges as us? And,
Sister, you sure know how to roll a whole lot of stuff. It's more questions, but I appreciate it. Yeah, I know it's the time. I know it's the time.
It was the technology.
As far as Saffron is concerned, I've been a proponent of organic production, but one of the problems was that we as a people were underrepresented in the organic arena. Mm-hmm. So my wife and I actually set up an organic farm in Louisiana while I was working at Southern in the 90s. I was trying to, because there was an attitude that, hey, that stuff might work in California, but it'll never work in the Deep South. And that was because of the increased disease and insect pressure. So it is more of a challenge, but it can be done. So I was the only certified African. We had the only certified African American farmer in the state. So there was a project in terms of cooperation. Sometimes the universities in different states, Alcorn, Tuskegee, Southern North Carolina A&T, instead of competing for funds, we dealt with establishing a collaborative group called SOFSEC, the Southern Food Systems Education Consortium. And that allowed us to do, my role was to deal with organic training. And so I reached out to, not going too much, not much success in Louisiana and the neighboring states, but someone introduced me to a sister named Cynthia Hayes, the late Cynthia Hayes. I did not know Cynthia. We just had a lot of mutual trust right off the bat because we knew we wanted the same thing. So what did she do? I had the funds for training. I could do the training to reach a certification. She recruited an excellent job of recruiting from not just people who were just gardening, and not there's anything wrong with gardening. I'm not saying that, but she was recruiting sure enough farmers who were really interested. So in 2006, I did training sessions in Savannah, Georgia, and also in Columbia, South Carolina. And quite a few of those farmers, and most of them were sisters, but quite a few of those farmers went on to get certified organic, which allowed them to access some markets that they probably would not have had that chance to do otherwise. As far as challenges of SOFSEC are concerned, one of them I see is that, and I was really impressed with that first session again, and several folks were talking about the need for collaborative, cooperative, rather than individual, just standalones, you know. So one of the things that we were thinking about in that regard is locating some land, bringing in some young farmers under the tutelage of experienced farmers. So we realized that a lot has been done in that regard. Also, a lot of the farmers that were certified, a lot of folks are not dealing with certification. So how are we going to redefine what is sustainable? Because, you know, a lot of times when you throw a word around like sustainable, a guy could say, well, you know, I'm spraying Roundup only 3 times this year rather than 6, you know, so it's really not sustainable. So we have to really deal with that. As far as the interconnection, you mentioned the virus, we did receive a small grant to help farmers in that, you know, struggling with because of the virus. And we have to date been able to, you know, send out, give out small grants to farmers in several of the states. But in reality, the struggles at farmers, you know, farmers, we've always had that struggle. For example, when I was at Southern, we actually did trainings. We actually helped the farmers do their applications for the lawsuit. I went to the law school. Southern has a law school. I told the students what was going on in terms of historical background. They came in and did a beautiful job helping those farmers, and say hundreds of them fill out those applications. So this recent situation is really no different in a sense. It's just a part of this overall racism and white privilege throughout the world. You know, like for example, even in Africa, there's still the racism there in terms of divide and conquer, putting one group against another, undermining. I remember when Kwame Nkrumah first came to power, and they undermined the cocoa, some of the cocoa sales, etc. So it's a constant thing there. But the thing is, you know, if you look at the reaction with the Black Lives Matter across the whole world, including parts of Africa, it's really like folks are getting tuned in. Now, one final point, the name that I chose in the 60s was Owusu. It's a Ghanaian name. I had never stepped foot in Africa, but the first place I went as part of Southern's work with small farmers was Ghana. And actually, I was really the only brother from the States walking around with the African suits, you know, but that's another story. But we visited a farm. These brothers, limited resource farmers, were growing this plant called Kleptoleptis. It was reportedly having some anti-malarial properties. So my guide, who was a Ghanaian, told the small farmers, did you check out what his name was? And the farmer said, one people, one destiny. And that really moved me, because the first thing I thought about was Garvey, but he could have just as easily been talking about Kwame Nkrumah. So I think that there is more hope for more collaboration. I've heard several more people talking about it, like in the early meetings. One brother's solution was to move to Tanzania because of the craziness in this country. So there's a worldwide appreciation of the struggle that people that look like us, whether they're in Brazil or the Congo or South Africa or Louisiana and Mississippi, we're still fighting the same battle.
So true. Thank you so much, Dr. Bendelli. I really appreciate your wisdom, and obviously we need to account for people who come with more experience to the table when we segment this out. But unfortunate, because the next panelist that's gonna share is Siobhan Terrell. And you there, Siobhan? You're on? Okay. Siobhan, I'm just gonna let you step right into sharing about the Black Church Food Security Network, how you got involved, a little bit about the history to that, and please let people know about ways that they can get involved. The Black Church has been instrumental in the fabric of all of our narratives, so it's yours.
Hi, everyone. First, I want to thank Mama Jemila for inviting me to serve as a panelist. I want to thank House of Ease and Zach for organizing this virtual festival for Juneteenth. So thank you all for that. And I want to start off with talking about my alma mater. Dr. Bendelli spoke to it, Tuskegee University. I can't be on any platform without shouting out my alma mater. Because I'm not going to talk about the agricultural side of it, right? My connection to it is the role of the church and how Booker T. Washington used the infrastructure of the church as a place to hold classes before the students could build the buildings. So I want to speak to the role of the church as it relates to Black community development, Black economic development. W.E.B. Du Bois, actually in Freedom Farmers books, I grabbed some books to also shout out some phenomenal authors and some books that everyone must read. So Dr. Monica White wrote a book called Freedom Farmers. And actually, she highlighted in a book of a quote by W.E.B. And he basically said that the Black church was the cornerstone of the Black community. And the Black church is where Black folks practice agency. And a lot of times they practice cooperative economics. And it was the first place of like mutual aid societies. Mutual aid societies were birthed most of the time out of the Black church, right? As well as institutions of higher education. So when you think about the role of the Black church in community and economic development, I think since we have been in America and since there has been some type of institution of a Black church, even meeting ground underneath a tree, the Black church has always held a space where Black people can be Black, unapologetically Black, as well as when Black people can practice agency. So I want to lift up two people who the Black Church Food Security Network draw inspiration from. I want to talk about Vernon Johns, and I want to talk about Albert Cleave. So Vernon Johns was actually the predecessor of Martin Luther King at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. And on Sundays and throughout the week, he will farm. On Saturdays, he will farm. On Sundays, he will come to church, preach that mighty word. And then after church, he will come to the front porch and sell his produce. And so that was the problem with the church. They was like, oh, this is too radical. We had cotton. We have evolved away from agriculture. So he ended up leaving Dexter Avenue and he moved back to South Carolina to start the City and Farm Enterprises. And what the City and Farm Enterprises seek to do was connect African-American farmers to niche markets within the Black church community. And Albert Cleave, which is the founder of the Shrine of the Black Madonna, he actually had this quote that I want to read about the role of the Black church. Oh, now my computer want to act up. So basically his quote was, because now my computer want to act up. So basically his quote was that we need to connect rural farmers to urban areas. Because when you think about urban areas, and most of the time urban areas don't have a place or have adequate farm space to grow food. So he was saying we need to partner with our family in the southern states to produce the food, to distribute it to the urban areas, to then disperse to the Black community. So the work of the Black Church Food Security Network is rooted in both of Vernon Johns and Albert Cleage, and acknowledging that the Black church is, in a lot of ways, has always been an anchor and a hub in the Black community. And what we seek to do is empower churches, empowering pastors to reimagine their assets for community development. And the mission of the Black Church Food Security Network is to build a community-based food system anchored by those directly impacted by food inequities, through the interface of the Black church, partner with Black farmers. Because when you think about the resources, the large resources that Black churches have, one of the panelists before me said, Black churches got money. Yes, and actually this book right here, Black Power Politics, has an entire chapter on the role of the Black church and how the Black church can be integral in Black liberation. And one of the things that he highlights is that 90% of Black giving is actually funneled through the Black church. So if we are more creative about how we can use those resources to build a just food system, then we will address much of the needs as it relates to food insecurity and food apartheid in our communities. So the Black Church Food Security Network, we have two major programs. We have Operation Higher Ground, and we have the Soil to Sanctuary Market. And I want to speak on our budding project as well. So Operation Higher Grounds, where we help churches start community gardens on church-owned land. Because everybody know, like, no one on this earth is producing land. So land by itself is already a limited resources. So we got to look to our anchors to see like what land do they have and then how can we use that land for farm production. So we help churches start community gardens. And we understand completely, right, that a community garden is not going to fix food apartheid. But in a lot of ways, a community garden could be an on-ramp in discussing food sovereignty and what food sovereignty look like on a community scale, as well as we help churches start farmers markets on church-owned land. So we transform parking lots, we transform multi-purpose rooms, we transform dining halls. Wherever that church has available, we transform it into a farmer's market, and we bring in Black farmers, we bring in Black businesses, and we create niche markets for those enterprises to come and sell their produce directly to the Black community. And we have a budding project called the Black Church Census. Because I did discuss the resources that the institution of the Black church has. So what the Black Church Census seeks to do is quantify all of those resources. Because if we are going to build a community-based food system, the first thing we got to do, as the panelists spoke before me, is look and see what assets we got in our community. Look and see what do we have in our hand. And with us being a faith-based institution, a faith-based organization, what we do is look at scripture. So there are several scriptures within the Bible that talks about what do you have in your hand, especially as it relates to like Moses and what he did with the staff, because a lot of people, they overlook the resources that they have. For example, a church van. A lot of people's like, my church van only works on Sunday to take people to church. But if you know how that can relate to like Black liberation and food sovereignty, and then you would have more imaginative ideas of what that church van can be transformed into. So the Black Church Census will quantify all of church-owned assets, such as a church van, commercial kitchens. A commercial kitchen can easily be transformed into a food demonstration place. It can be easily transformed into a place where caterers, chefs come in and prepare their food for the community. We're also wondering how much acres collectively does the institution of the Black church have? Because I think, honestly, there's a statistic, right, that Black people own less than like 1%. Well, in 1920, we owned like 16 million acres, right? Today, we own like less than 1% of that. And I think that statistic is just focused on like individuals and Black families, right? But when we look at our institutions as a collective, then how much land do we have as a collective? And then I think once we have these basic answers, these questions answered, then we will be able to leverage those resources to advance Black food and land sovereignty.
Siobhan, I thank you. You did your research and got prepared, like you did said the other night. I'm aware of the time. Zach, maybe you can help me out. We're locked into this time, right? Meaning
we're able to go forward a little bit as long as folks are comfortable to make sure we get all the panelists.
And is everybody okay with that? All right. Thank you, Siobhan. I invited our next guest here, Mikel Ali, to join us. He's with Mandela Grocery Cooperative in Oakland. And when I first got connected to him, I wanted him to talk about cooperatives. And when I got on the phone and I spoke with him, everything changed for me. Not that he couldn't speak on that, but now we don't have enough time, but not that he couldn't speak on that. What really touched my heart, and I want you, we've already had our conversation, Mikel. I'm just gonna basically cut to the chase here. Many people come to this food activism and food justice work from political views, some other angles. And when we spoke, you shared with me what brought you into this work. And I think that I was deeply touched by how you had a goal, which was first and foremost to help yourself to be well. With all due respect, I don't know, and I do not expect you to share anything about what your health crisis was, but I know that food and health is directly linked. I'd like you to share a little bit about that, and in particular, it was said earlier, you know, the statement, "We are what we eat." And along your journey, what do you see as the role of food in that statement, in light of that statement? You know, your awareness, your consciousness. I'm going to ask you to just take the floor on that. As you know, we had technical issues, so we're behind a little, but I just am looking forward to you speaking to others out there.
Can everybody hear me good right now? Yes, okay. Thank you, Sister Jemila, for having me, and thank all the other panel speakers for sharing this great information and knowledge to our people. I'm very proud and happy to be here right now. Doing something like this is something I haven't really foreseen in my lifetime, but as Sister Jemila was expressing, Spirit has led me to do these things as far as helping to spread information about health and wellness. In my early 20s, I was dealing with some health issues. I played basketball and sports majority of my life, and I thought I was pretty healthy physically, but mentally and spiritually, internally, I was dealing with a lot of health issues that I wasn't even aware of. So as my athletic start declining, so did my health, you know, so did my eternal health started to decline, and I was dealing with a lot of health issues. I was going to the doctor, trying to figure out what was going on with me. They diagnosed me with an infection, like a blood infection. They gave me a lot of antibiotics. They did a lot of testing on me. They didn't have no results and no answers to figure out what was going on with me internally. And that was very disappointing to me. It was very stressful. I was dealing with a lot of depression and a lot of pain. And I just went within myself and told myself I had to find a way to figure out what's going on with me and what's going on in my environment for me to be like this. So I just started doing a little research on the condition that I had, and I started to learn about the different environmental conditions that we were going through in our urban societies, dealing with the food, dealing with the water, dealing with the air and the chemtrails, just dealing with a lot of environmental issues that affects internally our health and our wellness, and also dealing with the food that I was eating. Growing up, I was raised on a standard American diet. A lot of food that we eat in our urban, so-called ghetto communities. A lot of starch, a lot of bread, very few fruits and vegetables, and I just thought that was a norm. I thought that was how I was supposed to be eating. But soon to come to find out that, it was a backwards psychology of what I was programmed into, and to a lot of our people were programmed into eating American standard diet. So just with that awareness of what I was doing to my body, I took it upon myself to find a way to transition and shift my health personally in using food as medicine. So I started coming across a lot of information about, veganism and the benefits of eating a plant-based diet. I also learned more about water intake and how water is very important for us, and how, majority of the water from tap to shower water to, even the bottled water we drink is very polluted, has a lot of chemicals in it. Started learning about the foods, being GMO and organic. Started learning more about the salts and the different seasons that we use that have a lot of MSG in it that helps to, pollute the body and pollute the brain. And this was learning that a lot of cultural foods that we eat in the African American cultures can be over time detrimental to our body. So just told myself I had to make a complete shift. I had to change my diet. I had to change my lifestyle, and just started going about doing that slowly, taking the time to become a pescatarian, and starting to increase or decrease the amount of meat I was intaking. Started to eat a lot of more fruits and vegetables, but still was just learning more about the proper fruits and vegetables to take in. We have a lot of hybrid fruits and vegetables that's in the American diet that most of us shouldn't be consuming, and just started learning more about foods on an alkaline and a more energetic level, studying the works of Dr. Sebi, studying the works of Alayla Africa, studying the works of many other health practitioners like Dr. Queen of Fuller, or just all these different health viruses that are not known to our common African American society, and really started diving into the information, seeing what it can do for my body. Started eating more fruits and vegetables, started to take more nutrient-dense foods and mineral-dense foods, and started to see my mind shift along with that. My consciousness being woken and aware, me being more aware of things going on around me, me wanting to tap in more to myself spiritually, me wanting to be more of a help to myself, but also to my family and in my community. So within that learning process, I started coming across the access of crystals, using crystals and stones as the way to naturally heal the body, working with herbs to cleanse the body, to detox the body, doing juice fasts and cleansings to give my body a lot of energy, to give my body a lot of nutrients that I need, and also just starting to live a plant-based and an alkaline lifestyle off the studies of Dr. Sebi. So within that, as I started to shift my internal health, my mental health started to increase. My brain capacity started to move a lot better. I was able to memorize things a lot better. I was able to focus a lot more. I was able to collectively gather my thoughts and my emotions and handle them on a more stable level. And as I started to do that, I started to notice that a lot of things around me started to shift. A lot of the people that I was around started to shift from my life. A lot of bad habits and bad things that I was into started to shift in my life. And I said, you know what, this is a path that is meant for me, that, I want to go deeper and learn more. And so I started getting to more spiritual practices, spiritual modalities, started studying more of like the Kemetic sciences and the history of our Kemetic or Egyptian ancestors, started learning more about Ifa or Yoruba and the different influences they have around all our different diasporas around the world. And I said, yeah, you know what, I want to learn more about these cultures. I want to actually embrace and be among my people on a global scale. As African Americans, we're not really trained or really advised to travel outside of America much. We're told that, America is the best place in the world, and that a lot of other people in the world are dealing with less problems and they have less conditions that's not good for us. And we might get sick and we might die just living in America. So, I went within myself to challenge myself to just be brave and try something new, do things outside of the norm. And I started traveling, got some opportunities to travel to Cuba on a spiritual retreat, got a chance to travel to Haiti to do some spiritual work with some powerful people out there. And as I started to travel and go into these months of different cultures of our people, I started to see wow, all these things are interconnected. Like our culture in America is just like our culture in Haiti, just like our culture in Africa. And actually got a chance to go to Ghana last October. And that really opened my eyes to see like, well, wow, we are all amongst the planet, all our people, we're everywhere. It's not a place in the world that we haven't originated at. It's not a place in the world that we haven't came from, but just our cultures and our mindset has been broken down to the point where now we're thinking that, we're at the bottom, or we're thinking that we're just a minority when we're really the majority on the planet, And so when I started to see that, I said, I have to find a way to influence my people to be more interconnected, for us to have more sovereignty amongst ourselves. And I think the first sovereignty for our people is going to come internally, and I'll have witnessed that in my own life as I changed my eating habits, as I changed my lifestyle, as I started going down a more natural and holistic path of living. I started to see that, more opportunities start coming to me, more things that I was naturally supposed to be doing and capable of doing start to be revealed to me. And my consciousness and my awareness started to open up a lot more. And within that, I started to do more services that I knew that were on my experiences, as far as working with crystals and stones to make jewelry and to make products so people can naturally heal with that, working with herbs and working with natural elements like sea moss, like these different superfood powders like moringa and baobab that comes from a lot of indigenous places around the world where we don't get access to. And so, as I started working more with these natural herbs and minerals, I started to see like, we have an issue on the planet where we have a deficit of opportunities from natural resources that come from our indigenous lands that we're not getting access to. We don't have the means to acquire these things. We have systems and we have governments and we have, just a whole global structure that's designed against us, for us not to be able to come together, for us not to be able to receive all the resources that we need for us to be sustainable, for us to take care of ourselves. So within me doing those things, on my personal business, I said, you know what, I can only do one thing by myself, and I need a team around me. I need people to support me in what I'm doing. And I was shopping at Mandela's Grocery Cooperative for some time. And I had a good friend down there, Brian, who told me that opportunity was open up for, working in the kitchen and being a part of the co-op. And he very much advised me to apply and to be a part of the cooperative efforts that they were making there. So, I told myself that this would be a great opportunity for me to learn more how to work with my people, to be a part of an establishment that has been open for, 10 plus years, that has been doing work in the community. And so I took that opportunity and just been growing with it. Now I'm a full-time worker owner. Now I have more opportunities to connect with the community and help feed our people, which, is our most important thing that we need for our people, is food, clothes, and shelter. If we can establish that and maintain that and make it sustainable, we won't have to look for outside helps from other nations of people and other people who want to control us and want to take away from, what we naturally is our birthright. So, it's just been an honor to be a part of these collective works, to be able to speak to people in this panel right here. And I just want to be a way to bridge the gap between the youth and also the elders, and show our youth a better way of growing up outside of these school systems that's designed against us, outside of this corporate structure that's keeping us down, and also just our culture, just be able to fully capture our culture and for us to be benefiting off it instead of these other people that's benefiting off our culture. And also just making sure that our elders know that, there's other ways that we can go about operating outside of the ones that we might have known already, but also taking that wisdom and knowledge and placing it in front of us and our current youth and our current leaders in order for us to make a change in the way for our people in the next coming future.
Thank you, Mikhail. I was going to ask you something, but you actually did it. I wanted you to share something with young folks out there like you. I mean, it's really it's something that weighs heavy on my heart. That people of your generation are raising families and taking care of elders, and we're sick. We're really sick. And I'm going to ask you if there's a way that you could just put in the chat box of some contact information if people would want to talk with you. I'm hoping this will span out. Either people listening today or listening on the recorded version of this will be able to hear your words, because I know it resonates with a lot of young men and women out there. So I thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks, everybody.
Brother Eric, Brother Eric, I could have a whole panel and you be on it, but I want to just, we had so many things that we could speak about. And I really, at this point, what I want to do is, based on our conversations, you know, I really would like people to know a little bit about you and Black Yield Institute and what's going down there. And in particular, you and I have an interesting background because we look at things from systems because of that academic world puts all of that. And, you know, I think that what we talked about the other night, which really resonated with me and I felt was important for you to share here, and I wish you could have shared it earlier, is that we're at a junction right now where we are hearing the stories, the narrative is being written. And we're able at this point, for me, it seems really beautiful to see us going cross-generation and education backgrounds. Because what we're dealing with are institutions and systemic racism and white supremacy. And we as a people have been resilient and we continue to be resilient. And I can tell you all day what Black liberation feels like to me. And I've heard so many people tell me what Black liberation feels like to them. And we're still fighting for it. And I think that there needs to be an opening, an introduction to a perspective on how do we get from this concept and how do we continue this narrative in our ancestors' work. I know you know where I'm going with that. So I'm gonna ask you to do that. And I thank you, brother.
Sure. Thank you. I give thanks for the opportunity and not only to share, but also the opportunity to be amongst just wise folks on this call. Man, y'all got me bubbling. I'm bubbling just with all the comments and experience that's been shared. So I give thanks. With Mama Jemila, I think one thing that we talked about a few days ago was one, being able to practice those principles that we learned, right? One of the Babas earlier, I think it was Dr. Bendelli, mentioned something about Kwanzaa. And the Nguzo Saba, one of the principles, you know, when we talk about, you know, cooperative economics and we talk about a lot of different principles, but then also if you follow, you know, different traditions, you understand the principle of Sankofa, right? To go and fetch it. And one of the things that I think that's important to our movement work to build what we consider Black land and food sovereignty is to return to those narratives and stories and pathways of liberation that unfortunately have been buried. And so we have to go and fetch them. And so particularly, I think one of the most important technologies that we actually have is our own memories. You know, remembrance is a collective act. And so if we do the work of learning from what we come from, I think that it will give us some instructions and guidance for what is to come. And I don't think that, I mean, we're just talking conceptually if we believe that Black land and food sovereignty, food justice, whatever we call it, is going to happen. One, without strategy, and two, without remembrance. And so I think that one of the most important things that we can do is to learn from those experiences of what we come from. One way, and in fact, I'll talk about this, is actually happening right now, pre-record. Our organization, Black Yield Institute, did what we call for this whole weekend, Marooneteenth. What we want to do in the Juneteenth celebration is lift up the narrative and approach liberation of Maroon communities and Maroon societies. Because I think that there's a need for us to lift up several narratives. I think that on today, while we celebrate the liberation of Africans, you know, from what I consider from the white pen through legislation. And it's not that our people didn't fight for it, but the Juneteenth is a celebration of emancipation of our people from legislation. There's also a narrative of our fighting for our liberation through the Black hands, right? So we have to be able to lift up both of those, because I think that if we don't, then we play in the hands of white supremacy, particularly in the way that that you see the trajectory. There's that formula, right? There's a formula that we're given kind of the acceptable way for us to struggle, right? Where certain ways are okay, other ways are not. And so I think that in order for us to do that, we have to go and fetch all of it, not just the ones that's pretty and cute, or the ones that folks have told us that we can struggle, or how we can struggle. But that means if we're going to actually get to sovereignty, any modicum of sovereignty, meaning control over the land, and when I say control, I don't mean domination, but I mean, being in relationship with the land and the food resources that we are privileged to be a part of through our traditions and through our people, through our heritages. The only way we're going to do that is to be able to assert as many approaches as we can to actually build movement. And the only way you can do that, I believe, is to go and fetch it, and then also imagine a future that does not exist. And so I believe that that's where it's got to start. And it has to be about movement. And at the very basis of movement has to be relationships. So we need to be talking to one another. We need to be touching one another. We need to be connecting with one another and being in community with one another. Even during this time of social distance, we need to be in community, because otherwise we're not going to get to those things. And 20 years from now, there'll be a Juneteenth celebration, and we're going to be like, remember that time when we was on there, we had a good conversation. The only way we do this is by strategizing and being in deep community and in deep, and not just deep community with one another, but also practicing that remembrance, what we come from as we propel toward where we're going.
Eric, I want you to share a little bit about ways that people might be able to connect. You could put it in a text or something to connect with Black Yield Institute and stay involved in what you're doing. I'm so aware of the time, and I'm feeling sorry in my heart for the participants and having to rush people through this. Are there any last reflections or something that you would like to share?
No, I just want to thank everybody again for all of what we do. Baba Scott talked about it earlier. We all have pieces to a puzzle. We all serve in that role. I think it's whether you're cooking in the kitchen, or you're growing food, or you're distributing food, or political education, or you're just getting our babies right through childcare. It's important. So I just thank everybody, and even those who are on the call who contribute to Black land and food sovereignty and to the our freedom dreams. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Aaron. Well, I appreciate everybody staying this long, but the reason I appreciate it is because I think that it's very special that we started out the session, which I wanted to have an acknowledgement and honoring of our ancestors. And we're fortunate enough to have Wanda Blake here, who at first I thought she's a chef, so she'll talk about food, and that'll be great, because I'm all about that food stuff too. But as with the other conversations with people I just met, there's so much to who we are. My past 2 phone calls with one and a few in the road passing and zipping around, I've come to cherish the way that she has opened my eyes to even more embrace the connection between food, our culture, and our spirituality. I've never gone to a church where at the end we didn't have fellowship and there's a whole lot of food. And that basically was with the realm that I worked in. Today, my understanding of Black people's connection to food and spirituality has so very much deepened, and I expect it will continue. Wanda, can you hear me there?
I can hear you.
All right. Well, I'm not going to take up any more time. I would like you to tell us a little bit about how you got into food and cooking And what I know you shared some things with me, a picture of an ancestor plate that you had prepared for Juneteenth. And I really, it is Juneteenth, and in the spirit of that, I'd like you to share a little bit about the connection between food and Juneteenth, and leave us with, leave those of us who not only like to eat, but also love food, growing it and then cooking it. Leave us with an inspiration, a deeper appreciation, which I know we'll have anyhow. So you take that floor, and thank you.
Hello, everybody. I just have to say that I have gotten fed by everyone who has spoken today, and I actually felt a food connection to each and every one of you. So in telling my story, I could just link it back to everything I heard today. My travel in cooking led me to going to the Black Farmers Market, which that blessing came from Dr. Gale. And that was the Black Farmers Market in Oakland. And that's where I met Dr. Scott, only to find out that we know a bunch of people in Fresno. And if you have any relatives in Fresno, you are definitely cousins. So Mr. Scott is my cousin. He introduced me to fresh black eyed peas that led me to being a part of the Black Eyed Pea Festival in Oakland. And it put me in a position to making black eyed peas that could be enjoyed by all of our people. So it was like, is it black eyed peas with meat? Is it black eyed peas with pork? Is it black eyed peas with no meat? And coming to the conclusion to make a black eyed pea chili that didn't have meat, and it satisfied everybody. So that's the link between Gail. And it's also the link between going to the farmer's market and getting the food there, the peas, the tomatoes, the onions, that put me in a relationship with Mr. Scott. It put me in a relationship with Ray's Roots Farm, which is a young Black man who has gardens all over this Bay Area. He has a garden that's in the back of a high school, not that far from my house. He has a garden that's connected on the side of a church. This brother is just planting wherever he can, and he's doing it. And so that's given me more of a connection with the land from that regard. When the sister talked about the church and gardening, the first pop-up event I did was Sunday Cooks and Church Ladies, because that's the foundation of where our food came from. It's the foundation of the tradition of us having food early on Sunday. It's the tradition of Sunday food being our leftover food on Monday. It's there's no fellowship without food. We don't do anything without food in our culture. So with that being said, I developed a passion for food. I love to cook for people. For all those farmers out there, anything you grow, I want to cook it. As far as my connection with the ancestors, there's nothing that I cook that is not in relationship to my ancestors. And I give the example of today. Here in Oakland, we have the America Institute, and they've been doing a Juneteenth festival for many years out in the park here. And what they've done is they would have a drumming that leads from the lake up to a tree that we have, made it a sacred space. And at that tree, those drummers would meet drummers from the First Nation. And what I did is I was a part of building a food altar for that celebration of Juneteenth. So this year, with us not being out in the public, my ancestors were like, well, you got a backyard and you're gonna do your food altar in your backyard. And by the way, this is the menu of what you're gonna cook. This is what we want. And so today I cooked. And as I cooked, I felt energy from my ancestors. I felt love from my ancestors. I felt a connection with the earth and the land because of the food and the remembrance of the work on the land that my ancestors have done to put food on the table for us to eat. So today's menu was a stewed rabbit with root vegetables, biscuit, fried bread, and I set up this altar with two of my ancestors here from the Mass branch. They have their red drink, libation, a pepper chow chow, that recipe that my ancestors gave me to produce when I could not get a commercial kitchen to work in. And through that product, I am producing, I'm selling, I have a business. And that's from a recipe that my ancestors gave me. Interestingly enough, the fried bread, they told me they wanted it and I wasn't gonna cook it. And 15 minutes before things were done, it was just like, you have to fry that bread. So in remembrance of the First Nation, in my family, we come from a branch of the Chickasaw. It's all related. It's all on the plate. It's all with a deep love of what we've all have gone through. It's just been a beautiful day. It's been a beautiful day of relationships. It's been a beautiful day of remembrance. When I cook for people, I want them to get a memory of some family member that cooked something that I cook, a memory of how we used to gather on Sundays at grandma's house, a memory of us feeling love and passing security at the table. Not table with china, not table with linen, but just that sense of unity that we have around food. And that's what I feel. I feel that's our power. I feel that's part of our economics. I did my prayers this morning, and the message I got, we were not freed. We were released. Every day we have to work and pray for freedom. And to my ancestors, all I could say is yes, amen, and ashe.
Ashe. Thank you, Wanda. Thank you, everybody, for staying here. Obviously, you can see the value here that could have been the whole day. Again, this is being recorded for any participants who want to share it, who are watching, who want to share it with their friends. I am so grateful, so honored to be amongst everyone here. And I wish it wasn't this COVID thing and I could be in California with you, but, or I guess you could be here in Baltimore, either way. Any closing comments, anything that people feel led to just send off to our listeners or to share with one another? And Zach, maybe you could just highlight those next things. I want to go hear some music. I'm ready to dance. It's done.
Mr. Scott, did you want to get in?
No, I was saying this has really been a pleasure for me. And she brought up something too that as a farmer, it's really amazing me. What I've learned too is that what these young chefs have been able to do with the products that I grow. You know, because I'm old school. You know, you fry it, you boil it, and that was it. But now it's amazing what they can do with the products that we're growing in the field now too. And I really, this has been a really good moment for me, for Gail and Jemila and all of you guys that come on. You know, I'm sure I've talked to most of you before, but I think my hat is off to you that you're young people and you understand the history and the spirit is in you, that you take it and, you know, and you take it to the next step. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Well, we are so grateful for you, Baba Will Scott, Dr. Owusu Bandeli, Baba, Mama Gail, Mama Jemila, and every one of the panelists. Deep gratitude for your time and appreciation for joining us and sharing your wisdom. I want to just close by saying this. We raised a lot today. We raised the consciousness, and we raised $1,200 for the Black Queer and Trans Protest Relief Fund. And so very thankful
That's great. That's great.
for the great success today. And we're moving onward to Black August. And so look forward to us sending out all the video content and then following up with some more opportunities for us to continue to build community across this technology. We'll have it together next time. But continue to check out the calendar at the Crowdcast link and at housebees.com/Juneteenth. We'll be emailing every one of the participants with some follow-up content. And also I'll drop my email address into the chat. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or want us to send me file resources directly to you.
Thank you so much.
Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Happy Juneteenth. Stay Black, stay proud, and stay true.
Yeah, thank everybody for their time and their energy. I'm wishing the best for everybody this Juneteenth, and let's continue to build for our people.
Thank you.
Support your Black farmers. Thank you very much.
Talk to you later, Wanda. And thank you, Dr. Benda. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I
everybody.
get him again.
Appreciate being a part of it.
Jemila, do you have the music link? I'll send it over to you.
Oh, send it to me. I'm signing off now.